You, waitress. The billionaire's manicured finger jabbed the air. Solve this little puzzle for me, and I'll give you 100 million. A joke, right? They expected her to crumble. But Anna looked at the equation scrawled on the napkin, a twisted problem that had haunted her past. It wasn't just math, it was a dare. Years of buried brilliance simmered. He saw a powerless servant. He had no clue she was a ghost, a prodigy buried by circumstance. A choice flickered in her eyes. Humiliation or risk? Her boss's fury? Irrelevant. See, they didn't know about her mother's debts, or how desperately Anna needed a reason to fight. But her quiet kindness, they had no idea how her compassion would change everything. He expected her to scurry away in humiliation. He never expected her to pick up a pen. What happened next didn't just offer her a fortune. It shattered the reality of a man who thought he could buy the world. This is the story of how a single equation written by a forgotten prodigy brought a titan to his knees and proved that a person's worth can't be measured by the uniform they wear. The clinking of fine crystal and the low hum of entitled conversations were the soundtrack to Anna Petrova's life. Each night she moved like a ghost through the opulent dining room of the Gilded Compass, a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign, only a reputation. She wore a starched black uniform that was perpetually a size too small, her movements efficient, her face a mask of polite indifference. To the patrons who dined on truffle-dusted everything and drank wine that cost more than her rent. She was invisible, a pair of hands that refilled water glasses and cleared away plates. But behind Anna's tired 26-year-old eyes lived the ghost of a different person. A person who once lived not in the world of hushed orders and differential nods, but in the vibrant, chaotic universe of abstract mathematics. A person who had walked the hallowed halls of the California Institute of Technology, her name whispered with a kind of reverence usually reserved for tenure professors. Anna Petrova, the prodigy, the one who could see the hidden patterns in prime numbers, the elegant dance of theorems that left others bewildered. That life had ended 5 years ago on a rain-slicked highway. The crash that stole her father had also saddled her mother, Elena, with a mountain of medical debt and a body that would never fully heal. Anna's scholarships, her research grants, her bright future, they all evaporated in the face of crushing reality. She had traded her whiteboard for a serving tray, her elegant proofs for customers' complicated coffee orders. Her brilliant mind, once a playground of infinite possibilities, was now occupied with calculating tips and memorizing the daily specials. Tonight the restaurant buzzed with an unusual energy. The staff had been on edge all day, briefed by the manager, a severe man named Mr. Dubois, about their VIP guests. Sheikh Khaled Al Fahim was not just wealthy. He was a force of nature, a Saudi tech magnate who had built a global empire from the ground up. He was known for his ruthless business tactics, his extravagant lifestyle, and his notoriously short temper. When he arrived, it was less an entrance and more a conquest. Flanked by 2 imposing bodyguards and followed by a trio of nervous-looking men in sharp suits, the sheikh moved as if he owned the very air in the room. He was handsome in a severe way, with eyes that seemed to miss nothing, and a perfectly trimmed beard that did little to soften the hard line of his jaw. He didn't speak to the staff. He issued decrees to his assistants, who then skewered to relay them to Mr. Dubois. Anna was assigned to their private alcove, her heart hammered against her ribs, not out of awe, but out of a deep instinctual dread. Men like him were the architects of the world she now served. They were the ones who sat in judgment, who held the power whose casual whims could make or break a person's day. Water. Still no ice. The bottle is to be opened at the table. One of the assistants snapped at her, not even making eye contact. Anna nodded mutely, her hands steady as she performed the familiar ritual. As she poured the water, she couldn't help but overhear their conversation. It wasn't about business deals or stock prices. It was about quantum computing, specifically its application in breaking modern encryption. The 3 men with the sheikh were executives from a Silicon Valley firm he was considering acquiring. The problem remains the integer factorization, one of the executives said, his voice strained. We can build the machine, but finding a stable algorithm. Shaw's algorithm is elegant but impractical at the scale we need. Sheikh Khalid leaned back, a predator toying with his prey. Impractical or impossible for your team. You come to me asking for $10 billion, yet you cannot solve the fundamental key that unlocks the very value you promise. Anna felt a strange, long, dormant part of her brain stir. Integer factorization, prime numbers, the building blocks of cryptography. It was the subject of her unfinished doctoral thesis. The problem they were discussing was a variation of a concept she had spent countless sleepless nights wrestling with, a beautiful, maddening puzzle. For a fleeting second, the scent of the restaurant's expensive floral arrangements was replaced by the familiar smell of chalk dust and old books in the Caltech library. She quickly suppressed the thought, retreating into the shadows of the alcove to await their order. Her job was to be furniture, not to have opinions or, heaven forbid, ideas, but the conversation continued, a siren song to the mathematician buried inside her. They spoke of computational complexity, of P versus NP, of the very limits of human knowledge. They were dancing around the edges of a problem she had once believed she could solve. Mr. Dubois caught her eye from across the room, his glare a clear warning. Do your job. Be invisible. Anna tore her attention away from the table, focusing on the simple physical tasks at hand. Clear the breadbasket, refill the water, wipe a non-existent smudge from the table's edge. Yet she couldn't shut her ears. She couldn't stop the equations from blooming in her mind, elegant and intricate, a language she understood better than the polite chatter that filled the room. The ghost of who she used to be was waking up, and Anna didn't know if she had the strength to put it back to sleep. The meal progressed with a palpable tension. The Silicon Valley executives picked at their seared foie gras, their faces growing paler with each probing question from Sheikh Khaled. He was not just a businessman, he was an intellectual bruiser, dissecting their proposals, exposing their weaknesses, and making it clear he was unimpressed. He had a formidable intellect, that much was obvious, but it was weaponized, used to assert dominance rather than to collaborate. Anna moved in and out of their sphere, silent and efficient. She cleared the appetizer plates, her mind a whirlwind. They were approaching the problem all wrong. They were trying to brute force a solution with processing power when the answer lay in a more elegant theoretical approach, a shift in perspective. A specific application of elliptic curve cryptography combined with a non-standard prime number savvy she had theorized years ago. The idea sparked in her mind so bright and clear, it almost made her gasp. She could see the proof, the logical steps unfolding in her head like a blooming flower. She quickly forced it down. It was a fantasy, a dangerous, pointless fantasy. What was she going to do? Interrupt a $10 billion negotiation to lecture a world-famous tycoon about number theory? They would have her thrown out. She would be fired, and she couldn't afford that, not with her mother's next round of physical therapy bills looming. The main course was served, a symphony of Wagyu beef and truffle joes. The executives barely touched it. Finally, the sheikh had had enough. He threw his napkin down on the table with a sigh of theatrical boredom. "You have wasted my time," he declared, his voice low but carrying an unmistakable edge of finality. The three men flinched. "You bring me a half-built engine and ask me to fund your search for a key. I am an investor, not a dreamer." He fell silent, his dark eyes scanning the table. Then he picked up a heavy gold-plated pen from his jacket pocket. With a few sharp movements, he began to scribble on a fresh linen napkin. Anna, standing nearby with a water pitcher, saw a string of symbols that made her breath catch in her throat. It wasn't just a random problem. It was a highly condensed, brutally elegant formulation of the exact computational dead end they had been discussing. He had distilled a mountain of theory into a single terrifying equation. He called it the Allahim cipher, a personal challenge he used to vet potential chief engineers. He slid the napkin to the center of the table. "This," he said, his voice laced with arrogance, "is the core of it. The lock. Everything you have just said, all your talk of quantum states and computational power, is meaningless until you can solve for n." The executives stared at the napkin as if it were a coiled snake. One of them, a man with thinning gray hair, palled. "Sheikh, with all due respect, that's a problem that would take a team of cryptographers and mathematicians years, if not decades, to solve. It touches on the very edge of our understanding of prime distribution. The sheikh let out a short, humoral laugh. And yet the answer exists. I have seen it. He was lying. Anna knew instantly. It was a bluff, a power play. The problem, as he'd written it, was unsolved. Theoretically solvable, perhaps, but no known solution existed. His gaze swept past the cowering executives, past his stone-faced bodyguards, and for the first time it landed directly on Anna. He saw her standing there, a silent servant in a cheap uniform, her eyes lingering for a fraction of a second too long on the napkin. He saw not a person, but an object, a prop in his grand display of power. A cruel, dismissive smile touched his lips. He raised his voice, making sure the entire alcove, and perhaps even the tables nearby, could hear him. He pointed a perfectly manicured finger at her. "You see," he said, his voice dripping with condescending amusement. "Perhaps I am asking the wrong people." He looked directly at Anna, his eyes mocking her very existence in his rarefied world. "You, waitress." Anna froze the heavy picture, suddenly feeling like it weighed $1,000. Every eye at the table turned to her. "How about you?" The sheikh continued, the sneer in his voice now unmistakable. He gestured toward the napkin. "You seem interested. You solve this little puzzle for me." He chuckled, the sound grating and ugly. "And I'll give you 100 million. The executives gave forced, sycophantic laughs. One of his bodyguards cracked a smile. The air grew thick with humiliation. It was a joke, of course, a cruel public jab meant to underscore the incompetence of his potential partners by comparing them to the most powerless person in the room. He wasn't speaking to her. He was using her as a punchline. He expected her to blush, to stammer an apology, to scurry away in shame. For a moment, Anna did feel the hot flush of shame creep up her neck. She felt the weight of her uniform, the ache in her feet, the crushing reality of her life. But then she looked at the equation again. She saw the sneer on the sheikh's face, and in that moment, something inside her snapped. The years of repressed intellect, of stifled ambition, of mourning for the life she had lost, coalesced into a single sharp point of defiance. He thought she was nothing. He thought she was a joke. He had no idea who he was talking to. The world seemed to slow down. The murmur of the restaurant faded into a distant roar, like the sound of the ocean heard from inside a seashell. All Anna could see was the napkin, the arrogant smirk on Sheikh Khalid's face, and the path that lay before her. A path of humiliation if she walked away, and a path of unimaginable risk if she stayed. Her training, her every instinct as a waitress, screamed at her to apologize and retreat. The customer is always right. Never engage. Be invisible. Mr. de Dubois was already moving towards their alcove from across the dining room, his face a thundercloud of fury. He would fire her on the spot. No, he would have her escorted out by security to make an example of her. She'd be blacklisted from every fine dining establishment in the city. How would she pay for her mother's medication then? But the ghost of the Caltech prodigy whispered something else in her ear. He's wrong. The equation is flawed in its premise. Not unsolvable, but beautifully, elegantly flawed. You know how to prove it. It was a challenge not just to her current self, the harried waitress, but to the person she used to be, the one who lived and breathed this world of pure logic. To walk away felt like a betrayal of that person, a final surrender. The sheikh's smirk widened. He saw her hesitation as fear and embarrassment, confirmation of his little power play. "What's the matter?" he goaded softly. "Cat got your tongue, or is it simply beyond your capabilities?" His words were meant to be the final crushing blow. Instead, they were the spark that lit the fuse. Capabilities. He had no idea. Anna's gaze lifted from the napkin and met his. For the first time that night, she wasn't a servant looking at a master. She was an intellect praising an adversary. The fear in her chest was still there, a cold, hard knot. But it was now joined by something else, the thrilling, terrifying surge of academic adrenaline she hadn't felt in 5 years. "Do you have another pen?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the charged silence of the alcove like a scalpel. The sheikh's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of genuine surprise. The executive stared at her, their mouths slightly agape. Even Mr. Dubois, now only a few feet away, froze in his tracks. Sheikh Khaled recovered quickly, his expression shifting to one of intrigued cruelty. He was enjoying this new twist in his game. Ambitious, he mused, and slowly, dramatically, he pulled the golden pen from his pocket once more. He didn't hand it to her. He placed it on the table, a gauntlet being thrown down. "Be my guest." Anna walked forward, her legs feeling strangely disconnected from her body. She could feel every eye in the room on her. Her friend Liam, serving a table nearby, was watching with wide, terrified eyes. She ignored them all. She picked up a fresh linen napkin from the service stand, folded it once with a crisp, practiced movement, and approached the table. Her hand trembled as she reached for the pen. It was heavier than she expected. Cold and solid, a pen worth more than she made in a month. For a horrifying second, her mind went blank. The numbers, the elegant proofs, they vanished, leaving only a roaring void of panic. "What are you doing? You're a fraud. You're going to make a fool of yourself." She took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a fraction of a second. She pictured her mother's tired smile, the stack of unpaid bills on their small kitchen table. She pictured her old mentor, Dr. Evelyn Reed, her face alight with passion as she explained a complex theorem on a dusty chalkboard. The noise receded, the void filled, and the numbers returned. She clicked the pen. The sound was deafening. Without looking at the men at the table, she began to write. Her hand, which had been trembling, was now impossibly steady. The pen flew across the linen, a blur of motion. She didn't write a simple answer. She started by rewriting his premise, exposing the subtle flaw in his formulation with a short, brutal proof. Then she laid out the foundational steps for the correct approach. It wasn't a full solution that would take reams of paper and weeks of work, but it was something more important. It was the key, the roadmap, the elegant first move in a cosmic chess game that he and his team of experts had been failing to even begin. She filled one side of the napkin, her script small and precise. She flipped it over and continued on the back, her logic flowing in an unbroken, crystalline stream. Line after line of symbols that were to her as beautiful and expressive as poetry. She ended with a final declarative statement, the corrected value for n, and underlined it twice. The entire process took less than 2 minutes. When she was done, she placed the golden pen back on the table with a soft click. She took the napkin she had written on and without a word slid it across the polished wood to rest beside the Sheikh's original. Then she turned and walked away. She didn't look at the Sheikh's face. She didn't look at the stunned executives or the apoplectic Mr. Dubois. She walked straight past her friend Liam's shocked expression through the swinging doors of the kitchen and into the cacophony of clattering dishes and shouting cooks. Her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The kitchen was a chaotic sanctuary. The metallic clang of pots, the hiss of the grill, the stressed shouts of the head chef. It was a familiar noise that usually faded into the background of Anna's consciousness, but now it was a wall of sound she desperately hid behind. She leaned against a cool stainless steel counter, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Anna, what in God's name was that?" Liam appeared at her side, his face a mixture of terror and awe. Dubois looked like he was going to spontaneously combust. "You're going to be fired. What did you do?" "I don't know," she whispered, and it was the truth. She didn't know what had possessed her. It was an impulse, a rebellion 5 years in the making. She pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes, trying to stop the world from spinning. The image of the Sheikh's sneering face was burned into her mind. She had just committed career suicide. She would be lucky to get a job washing dishes after this. Meanwhile, back in the dining room, a profound silence had fallen over the Sheikh's alcove. The 3 executives from Silicon Valley were frozen, staring at the napkin Anna had left behind. Miss Dubois stood paralyzed a few feet away, unsure of how to handle a situation so far outside the realm of his experience. Sheikh Khaled Al-Fahim had not moved. His eyes were fixed on the elegant, dense script covering the napkin. At first, his expression was one of cynical amusement, expecting to see gibberish or a schoolgirl's attempt at algebra. But as his eyes scanned the first few lines, the amusement evaporated. He was not just a rich man, He was a gifted mathematician in his own right. It was how he'd made his first fortune, designing an unbreakable encryption algorithm in his youth. He understood the language on that napkin perfectly, and it was a language that spoke of a genius far exceeding his own. She hadn't just solved his puzzle, she had dismantled it. She had corrected his premise. The first line was a simple, devastating takedown of a hidden assumption in his equation that he himself had never noticed. It was a flaw no one, not his PhD consultants, not his teams of engineers, not even his academic rivals, had ever pointed out. His eyes traced the flowing logic of her proof. It was radical, unconventional. It used a theoretical bridge between algebraic geometry and number theory that was so advanced it was barely being discussed in the most esoteric academic journals. It wasn't just a solution, it was a paradigm shift. Fared the Sheikh said, his voice quiet and his head of security, a mountain of a man who was always at his side, leaned in. Get me Dr. Aris Thorne on the line now. Dr. Thorne was the head of Khaled's Advanced Research Division in Zurich, a Nobel laureate in physics. Farid, looking confused but obedient, stepped away and discreetly spoke into his wrist. One of the Silicon Valley executives, the one with graying hair, leaned forward tentatively, his eyes wide with disbelief. Shay, is this real? Khaled didn't answer. He picked up the napkin with a hand that was not quite steady, his knuckles white. He read it again, and then a third time. Every line held. The logic was flawless, airtight. It was like watching a grandmaster in chess play a game 20 moves ahead of everyone else. The phone in Fared's hand buzzed. He answered and passed it to the Sheikh. Aris Khaled said, his voice clipped. I am sending you a picture. I need you to verify it. Drop everything. He used his phone to take a high-resolution photo of both sides of the napkin and sent it. The silence stretched thick and heavy. The executives didn't dare speak. Mr. Dubois didn't dare move. They were all orbiting the silent, furious gravity of the man at the head of the table. Seconds ticked by like minutes. Then the Sheikh's phone rang. He put it on speaker. Cold. Where did you get this? Dr. Thorne's voice was thin and ready, but crackling with an excitement Khaled had never heard before. My God, this is revolutionary. This isn't just a solution to your cipher. This is a proof of concept for a whole new class of algorithms. The work on elliptic curve isogeny is purely theoretical. No one has ever successfully applied it this way. Who wrote this? Is this from the team at MIT? No. Khaled, said, his voice barely a whisper. He stared at the swinging kitchen doors through which Anna had disappeared. It was not from a team at MIT. Well, whoever it is, you need to hire them immediately. Give them whatever they want. A blank check, a research institute. This person has just jumped the field of quantum cryptography forward by at least a decade. There was a click as Dr. Thorne hung up. Sheikh Khaled slowly lowered his phone. The sneer, the arrogance, the casual cruelty, it was all gone. In its place was a look of raw, unadulterated shock. His jaw, which had been set in a hard line of superiority all evening, was now slack. Hikali al-Fahim, a man who could bend markets to his will and purchase entire city blocks on a whim, had just been intellectually annihilated. And it had been done by a waitress on a napkin in 2 minutes. He looked up, his eyes locking onto Mr. Dubois. The waitress, he said, his voice a low growl. The one who was just here. Where is she, Mr. Dubois, who had been sweating profusely, finally snapped out of his trance? The kitchen Sheikh. I will retrieve her at once. I am so terribly sorry for her behavior. It is an inexcusable breach of protocol. She will be dealt with immediately. He scurried toward the kitchen, ready to unleash his fury on Anna. But Sheikh Khaled held up a hand, a gesture that stopped the manager in his tracks. No, the Sheikh commanded, his voice regaining some of its authority, though the shock was still evident in his eyes. You will do nothing. Stay here. He rose from his chair, a towering figure of immense power, and strode towards the kitchen doors himself. His bodyguards moved to follow, but he waved them off. This was something he had to do alone. The moment he pushed through the doors, the cacophony of the kitchen staff died down. Cooks froze with pans in midair. Dishwashers stopped their work. The sudden appearance of the world-famous billionaire in their hectic workspace was like a wolf walking into a chicken coop. He scanned the room, his eyes instantly finding Anna. She was still leaning against the counter, her back to him, with Liam trying to talk to her in hushed, urgent tones. "You!" the Sheikh's voice boomed, silencing the last remaining whisper. Anna flinched and turned around slowly. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of defiance and terror. She looked so small and insignificant amidst the industrial kitchen equipment, still wearing the ridiculous, ill-fitting uniform, and yet she had produced the work of a titan. The contradiction was so stark it made Khaled's head spin. "We need to talk," he said, his tone no longer mocking, but hard and intense. Before Anna could respond, Mr. Dubois burst through the doors behind the sheikh. "Miss Petrova, you are fired. Get your things and leave the premises immediately. I will not have my staff harassing our esteemed guests." The sheikh turned his head slowly, fixing Mr. Dubois with a glare so cold it could have frozen flames. "You will be silent," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Or the next words you speak will be to your new unemployment officer. This woman is no longer your employee. As of this moment, she works for me." The entire kitchen staff stared, dumbfounded. Mr. Dubois' mouth opened and closed like a fish, no sound coming out. Anna found her voice. "I don't work for you," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I don't want your money." Khaled took a step closer. The fear was radiating off her, but there was an unmistakable core of steel beneath it. He was intrigued. "The $100 million is yours. It is a matter of honor. A wire transfer will be arranged, but this is no longer about the money. This is about what you wrote on that napkin." "Who are you?" "I'm a waitress," she said, lifting her chin. "Do not insult my intelligence," he shot back. "Waitresses do not write proofs that Nobel laureates call revolutionary. Who are you?" His intensity was overwhelming. Anna felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. The past she had buried so deep was clawing its way to the surface. She didn't want this, any of it. She just wanted to be left alone to go back to her quiet life of anonymity. "It was just a party trick," she mumbled, looking away. "I got lucky." "Luck?" The sheikh let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "That was not luck. That was genius. I have teams of the world's brightest minds who have been working on that problem for 2 years. They have accomplished nothing. You solved it in 2 minutes." He took another step, his voice lowering. "I will find out who you are with or without your cooperation. My resources are considerable. It will be much easier for both of us if you simply tell me." His threat hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. He could and would dig into her life, strip away her privacy, and uncover everything she had tried to leave behind. The thought terrified her more than his anger. Liam, seeing her distress, stepped forward slightly. "Sir, maybe you should leave her alone." "She's had a shock," fared the Sheikh's head of security, who had quietly followed him to the doorway, put a heavy hand on Liam's shoulder, a silent, effective warning to back down. Anna looked at the Sheikh at the unyielding determination in his eyes. He wasn't going to let this go. The game was up. "Petrova," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Anna Petrova," Khaled nodded slowly, committing the name to memory. "Anna Petrova," he repeated. He turned to Farid. "I want to know everything. Schools, family work, history, publications, everything. Use whatever resources you need. I want the file on my desk by morning." Farid nodded once and disappeared. The sheikh turned back to Anna. His expression was no longer just shocked. It was something else, something more complex. It was the look of a man who has just encountered a phenomenon he cannot comprehend. "You will be hearing from me, Miss Petrova," he said. It wasn't a threat or a promise. It was a statement of fact. He then turned and swept out of the kitchen, leaving a trail of stunned silence in his wake. Anna was left standing there, the ghost of her past, now fully resurrected, and staring her right in the face. She had solved the billionaire's puzzle, and in doing so, had created a far more complicated one for herself. The next 24 hours were a blur of surreal unreality for Anna. Mr. Dubois, now utterly terrified of her, stammered that she was on paid leave until further notice. She left the Gilded Compass in a daze, not through the staff entrance in the back alley, but through the main doors, a courtesy she had never been afforded. The cool night air felt strange on her skin, as if she were breathing for the first time after being underwater for years. She went home to the small, cramped apartment she shared with her mother, Elena. She didn't mention what had happened. How could she? How could she explain that she may have just become a millionaire because of a doodle on a napkin? It sounded like a fever dream. She simply went through the motions, helping her mother with her evening exercises, reading to her, and pretending that it was just another ordinary, exhausting day. But sleep did not come. All night she tossed and turned, haunted by the Sheikh's intense gaze and the terrifying realization that her carefully constructed anonymity was about to be shattered. Meanwhile, halfway across the world in a sterile data center in Riyadh, Sheikh Khalid Alam's vast intelligence network was whirring to life. The name Anna Petrova was fed into systems that could cross-reference global databases in seconds. Farid, his ever-efficient head of security, was orchestrating the search from the Sheikh's private jet as it sliced through the night sky back towards the Middle East. The Sheikh himself did not sleep. He sat in his leather-lined office at 40,000 Taleft, the napkin with Anna's writing laid out before him under a desk lamp. He had his own team in Zurich dissecting the proof, and their reports were coming in every hour, each one more breathless than the last. They had confirmed its validity. They were now modeling its implications, and the potential was staggering. It could render almost all current forms of digital security obsolete. It was a key to a kingdom he had only dreamed of conquering, and it had been delivered to him by a waitress. The first file on Anna Petrova arrived in his encrypted inbox just as the sun was rising over the Arabian desert. It was thin. Birth certificate, social security information, employment history for the last 5 years, a string of low-wage service jobs, a high school transcript that was good but not extraordinary. Nothing. It was the profile of a nobody. "This is not it," Khalid said into his satellite phone, his voice tight with frustration. "Dig deeper. University records. She must have had some higher education." The second file arrived 2 hours later, and this was it. The ghost. A full scholarship to the California Institute of Technology, majoring in pure mathematics. Her academic record was more than brilliant. It was perfect. Straight A's in courses so advanced they were practically theoretical. Glowing recommendations from every professor. And then they found the name of her doctoral advisor, Dr. Evelyn Reed. Khalid knew that name. Reed was a legend, a recipient of the Fields Medal, the highest honor in mathematics. He had tried to recruit her for his Zurich Institute for years, but she had always politely declined. The file contained a copy of Anna's unfinished doctoral thesis, non-standard CIV methods, and their application to isogeny-based crypto systems. It was the very theory she had used on the napkin. Attached was a note from Dr. Reed, written to the university board. "Miss Petrova's work is the most significant leap forward in this field in a generation. She is not just learning mathematics, she is creating it." And then 5 years ago, it all stopped. She withdrew from the university. Her records went dark, only to reappear a few months later as a barista at a coffee shop. The file included the police report from the car accident, the death of her father, Dmitry Petrova, a humble mechanic, the catastrophic injuries of her mother, Elena Petrova, the estimated medical costs of figure with so many zeros it made even Khaled blink. The picture was now complete, and it was a story of tragic, squandered genius. A mind that could have reshaped the world was instead being used to remember who ordered the decaf latte. A profound and unfamiliar emotion stirred in Khaled's chest. It was a strange mix of anger at the cosmic injustice of it all and a deep, unsettling sense of shame for his own callous behavior at the restaurant. His sneer, his cruel joke, he had thrown it in the face of a mind far superior to his own, a mind that had been broken not by failure, but by love and duty. He landed in Riyadh and went straight to his office. The $100 million had already been transferred to a trust account waiting to be claimed by Anna. But he knew that wasn't enough. Money was a crude tool, an insult to the elegance of what she had done. He wanted to understand her. He needed to. He picked up the phone. "Get me Dr. Evelyn Reed." An hour later, he was speaking to the elderly, formidable professor, Sheikh Alahim. Dr. Reed's voice was crisp and weary. "I have refused your recruitment offers 3 times. My answer has not changed. I am not calling to recruit you." Dr. Khalid said, I am calling about a former student of yours, Anna Petrova. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Anna, is she all right? What has happened? The weariness was gone, replaced by pure urgent concern. She is fine, Khaled reassured her. I met her by chance. She shared a piece of her work with me. It was breathtaking. Dr. Reed was silent for a long moment. I knew it, she finally whispered. I knew that mine couldn't stay dormant forever. It's too bright. What did she show you? Khaled described the napkin. He heard the professor let out a soft, knowing laugh. Of course, Dr. Reed said that was her thesis, her beautiful, unfinished symphony. I always told her the solution was elegant, not forceful. She sees things others don't. It's a gift, a burden too. Why did she leave? Khaled asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it. Dr. Reed told him the story, her voice softening with sadness. She spoke of Anna's fierce loyalty to her family, her refusal to accept charity or help from the university, insisting she had to handle it herself. She sacrificed her own future for her mother's care. The world of mathematics lost one of its brightest stars that day. I have tried to reach out over the years, but she's proud. She never responds. After the call, Khaled sat in his silent office, the Dubai skyline glittering outside his window. He now understood the who. Now he needed to deal with the what next. Simply giving her the money felt like a hollow gesture. It would solve her financial problems, but it would leave the brilliant mind that had captivated him to languish. It felt like buying a priceless Stradivarius violin and leaving it in a dusty attic. He had a new plan. This would not be a transaction, it would be a test. A proper one. Not to see if she was smart. He already knew she was, but to see if the prodigy was still in there, buried under 5 years of hardship. He would make her an offer she couldn't refuse, not of money but of something far more valuable to a mind like hers, a problem worthy of her intellect. A sleek black car without markings pulled up in front of Anna's rundown apartment building the next morning. A man in a simple but impeccably tailored suit knocked on her door. It wasn't Far Reed, but another member of the Sheikh staff, his face polite and unreadable. He presented her with a small, heavy box and a letter. Inside the box was a state-of-the-art encrypted satellite phone. The letter was from the Sheikh. It was brief and to the point. He informed her that the $100 million was waiting for her in a designated account and provided the details for her to access it. He made a formal, concise apology for his behavior at the restaurant. The last paragraph was an invitation. He asked her to meet him in 2 days to discuss a business proposition. He proposed his office in Dubai or a suite at the Four Seasons in her city. The choice was hers. Anna's hands shook as she read the letter. The money was real. It was an astronomical sum that would change her and her mother's lives forever. It was freedom. She could pay off every medical bill, buy a proper house, hire the best caregivers, and ensure her mother lived in comfort for the rest of her days. She could disappear and never have to see Sheikh Khaled Al-Fahim again. For a moment, that was all she wanted, to take the money and run, to reclaim her quiet, anonymous life, but without the crushing weight of poverty. But the last paragraph gnawed at her, a business proposition. He wasn't just paying her off. He wanted something more. The phone in the box felt like a challenge, a link to a world she had fought so hard to escape. Yet a part of her yearned for it, like a lost language. She spent the day in a daze, the untouched phone sitting on her kitchen table, like a strange artifact from another dimension. Her mother, Elena, noticed her distraction. "Anna, what is it?" she asked, her voice frail but her eyes sharp. "You seem a world away." Anna finally broke down and told her everything. The sneer, the napkin, the impossible equation, the life-altering sum of money. Elena listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When Anna was finished, her mother reached out and took her hand. "When your father died," Elena said softly, "you took the weight of the world on your shoulders. You gave up your world for mine. I never wanted that for you. But you are stubborn like your father." She squeezed Anna's hand. "This money, it is a miracle. It frees you. But that man, the Sheikh, he did not offer you a job because he is kind. He saw your mind, and a mind like yours, my daughter, is not meant to be hidden. It is meant to be used." Her mother's words clarified everything. Running away would be another kind of surrender. She had spent 5 years hiding her light under a bushel. Perhaps it was time to let it shine again, not just for herself, but on her own terms. She picked up the satellite phone. It rang once before he answered. Miss Petrova, Sheikh Khalid's voice was crisp, professional. I'll meet you, Anna, said her own voice, steadier than she expected. But not in Dubai and not at a hotel. There's an old library at the university, the Thompson Mathematics Library. It's closed for renovations. We'll meet there tomorrow afternoon, 2:01. There was a pause on the other end. She had rejected his options and dictated her own. It was a small but significant power play. She was choosing the ground, a place where she had once been sovereign. An excellent choice, he finally said, a hint of admiration in his tone. My people will make the arrangements. 2. Chakra. The next day, Anna walked onto the Caltech campus for the first time in 5 years. The memories flooded back, sharp and bittersweet. She wasn't wearing a waitress uniform, but a simple, clean dress she had bought that morning. It was the most expensive piece of clothing she owned, but it made her feel less like a curiosity and more like an equal. The library was silent and dusty, the shelves covered in white sheets. In the center of the main reading room, 2 simple chairs and a table had been set up. Sheikh Khalid was already there, standing by a window, looking out at the manicured lawns. He was dressed not in flowing robes, but in a sharp, dark business suit. He looked different here, smaller away from the trappings of his immense wealth. Miss Petrova, he said, turning to face her. Thank you for coming. Let's get one thing straight. Sheikh, Anna said, walking towards him, her heels clicking on the marble floor. I don't want your job, he raised an eyebrow. I haven't offered you one yet. You will? She continued, her confidence growing. You'll offer me a ridiculous salary to come and lead a research team to solve your problems and make you even richer. You think you can buy my brain just like you buy everything else, but you don't get it. What I did on that napkin, it wasn't for money or for you. It was for me. It was to prove that I still could. She stood before him now, her eyes blazing. You looked at me in that restaurant and you saw nothing. A servant, an object for your amusement. You didn't see a person. You judged my worth based on my uniform. That is not a man I want to work for. Cold listened to her impassioned speech without interruption. When she finished, a long silence filled the dusty library. He didn't look angry or offended. He looked humbled. You are right, he said, his voice quiet. Everything you have said is true. My behavior was inexcusable. It was born of an arrogance I am only now beginning to comprehend. I saw you, but I did not see you. For that, I am truly sorry. His apology was sincere, stripped of all artifice. It disarmed her. The money is yours regardless, he went on. It is a debt of honor, but my proposition is not what you think. Yes, I want you to work for my company, but not for me, for the world. He gestured to the table where a tablet lay. He tapped the screen, and a complex diagram appeared. This is a model of a global clean water initiative I have been funding. We are trying to create a low-cost, scalable desalination and purification system using nanotechnology. But we have a problem, the distribution logistics. Optimizing the network to serve the most remote villages is a mathematical problem of staggering complexity. It is in its own way as difficult as the Alfahim cipher. He looked at her, his eyes intense. I do not need you to make me richer, Miss Petrova. I need you to help me solve a problem that matters. I will give you your own independent research foundation. You will have a limitless budget, a hand-picked team, and complete autonomy. Your goal will not be profit. Your goal will be to solve problems like this one. You will answer to no one but your own conscience. Anna stared at him speechless. This was not what she had expected. He wasn't offering her a cage, no matter how gilded. He was offering her a key to the world she had been forced to leave behind, but on a scale she had never dreamed of. She thought of her mother's words. A mind like yours is not meant to be hidden. She had a choice. Take the money and live a life of quiet comfort, or take his offer and step back onto the world stage. Not as an employee, but as a force in her own right. It was a chance to finish her symphony. A year later, the name Anna Petrova was no longer whispered in the hushed halls of Caltech, but spoken with reverence in the boardrooms of global foundations and the conference halls of the United Nations. The Petrova Foundation, funded entirely by Sheikh Khalid Al Fahim's initial endowment, but operating with fierce independence, had become a powerhouse of practical humanitarian innovation. Anna never moved to Dubai. She established the foundation's headquarters in a modest modern building just a few miles from her old university campus. It was a symbolic choice, a bridging of her past and her future. Her mother, Elena, now healthy and vibrant, thanks to the world's best medical care, served on the foundation's advisory board. Her quiet wisdom, a grounding force for her brilliant daughter. Liam, her friend from the restaurant, was hired as her personal assistant. His loyalty and grounded nature proving invaluable as Anna's world expanded at a dizzying pace. Her first project was the water distribution problem the Sheikh had shown her. She and her hand-picked team of mathematicians, engineers, and logisticians, misfits, and forgotten prodigies she had sought out from around the world, tackled it with a relentless fervor. Anna didn't just solve the complex optimization equation. She developed a new logistical framework she called dynamic empathy, an algorithm that prioritized the most vulnerable communities rather than the most efficient routes. Her solution, which became known as the Petrova principle, was now being used by NOSs across the globe, revolutionizing disaster relief and aid distribution. Sheikh Khalid Al Fahim was a changed man. The encounter in the restaurant had been a profound crucible for him. Humbled by Anna's intellect and integrity, he had turned his vast resources toward more meaningful pursuits. He became the silent partner of the Petrova Foundation, its greatest champion and protector. But he never interfered. He understood that Anna's genius flourished in freedom, not under command. They communicated often no longer as master and servant, or even as employer and employee, but as peers. Their calls were vibrant, challenging debates about ethics, technology, and the future. He would present her with the world's most intractable problems: sustainable energy grids, global pandemic, modeling, equitable resource allocation, and she would approach them with the same fierce, elegant logic she had once applied to abstract theorems. One afternoon, Khalid visited the foundation's headquarters. There were no press, no entourage, just him and Fared. He found Anna not in a lavish corner office, but in the main research hall, standing before a massive floor-to-ceiling glass whiteboard. She was barefoot, dressed in simple jeans and a t-shirt, excitedly debating with a young mathematician she had recently recruited from a university in Nigeria. The board was covered in a breathtakingly complex web of equations, their current project, a model for reversing desertification in the Sahel. She saw him and smiled a genuine, unguarded smile he had never seen in the restaurant. "Khalid," she said, beckoning him over. "Good timing. I want to show you where the conventional models are going wrong. They're treating it as a static system." He walked over, standing beside her, and looked at the elegant script covering the board. It was the same handwriting he had first seen on a linen napkin. But now it was not a weapon of defiance, but a tool of creation. He was no longer a billionaire looking down on a waitress. He was simply a man standing in awe of a brilliant mind at work. The world had told Anna Petrova she was nothing more than the uniform she wore. But she had rewritten the equation of her own life, and in doing so was changing the world for the better. The solution she had taught him was never about the money. It was about seeing the true value that lay hidden in the most unexpected people. Anna's story is a powerful reminder that genius isn't defined by a bank account, and potential can be found in the most unexpected places. It's about the courage to reclaim your destiny even when the world has written you off. The Sheikh learned a lesson that day worth more than his billions. True value lies not in what you own, but in what you can understand and the good you can do. It reminds us all to look beyond the surface, because the person clearing your table might just be the one who can change the world. If this story moved, you don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs a dose of inspiration, and subscribe for more stories that prove the impossible is just a problem waiting to be solved. What did you think of Anna's final decision? Let us know in the comments below.